Somehow we have started a broadcast for some reason. Uh, I welcome all of you. We are still in a setting up mode right now, so I request Supriya to go on PowerPoint, full PowerPoint mode right now, um, and then probably um, we can switch back to Amarpreet. Somehow we lost Amarpreet on the way. Supriya, I can't see Amarpreet on this on the.
Oh, I see.
Can you
Yeah.
not hear me?
Yeah.
Supriya, we can see your screen and we can hear you, but somehow Amarpreet is not in the presenter list.
Okay. I see her. I can make her presenter.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Yes. So Amarpreet, we can see your screen. I think let's wait for another 2 minutes. Although we have started broadcast a little early, but let's wait for another 2 minutes and we can put ourselves on a mute. And I also
Okay.
request audience to wait for another 2 minutes before we start discussing the project StaSIO.
Right. Just to confirm, you can hear me okay?
Yeah,
We can hear you very well.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rajan Raval. I am based out of India. and I welcome all of you to this session of IBPSA Education Webinar Series 2019. During this series in 2019, we did have wonderful presentation based on special edition of JBEPS Journal, which talking about occupant behavior and user and a simulation. And continuing with the same topic, we have Supriya with us today, along with the Amarpreet and Aman. All three of them are based out of US and very active member of IBPSA USA. Many of you might have heard about Project StaSIO through various outreach work which IBPSA USA is doing. But I'm very glad and I welcome Supriya, Amarpreet, and Aman to this particular webinar. And they have agreed to share what they're doing on Project StaSIO with all of us. Thank you, Supriya. We'll have a presentation from all three of them, and they will talk about how they are dealing with the project. And then we will have a question and answer. For a question and answer, I request all of you to use a question pane. Supriya will be able to see what what the questions are. And at the end of the presentation, I will moderate the question and answer sessions. Before I hand it over to Supriya, I also want to invite all of you to Building Simulation Conference happening in next month in Rome. It's a flagship event of IBPSA World, and most of us eagerly wait for this event to take place since many, many years. There are some veterans right now and as attendees with us. I also welcome all those people who have joined across the world. Again, thanks, Supriya, and I'll hand it over to you and Amarpreet and Aman.
Thank you, Rajan. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're very excited to share with you more information on Project StaSIO, which we've been working on. Some of us over a year, and some of us have joined fairly recently. So I'll jump right into it. I'd like to quickly introduce you to the panel. I'm Amarpreet Sethi. I'm with TK1SC. We're an engineering firm. And then Supriya Goel is with Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and Aman is with AECOM. And we'll start to share a little bit about our Project StaSIO with you. And please share your questions on the screen, as Rajan mentioned as well. So really, we always want to start with the why. So, and this is something that I'm sure you're all familiar with, Architecture 2030 Challenge. And the key here is we're not meeting our targets as we intended to get to our carbon neutral goal in 2030. And we can see here from this graph that at the rate that we're going, we certainly wouldn't be meeting our goal, and it's already 2019. So what is it that we can do on our end, especially as building simulation experts, to perhaps change our trend line here and move closer to our goal in a rate that we would be happier with? So this is sort of the basis of the why. And one of the things that we have found, and this was this Project StaSIO started with that passion of why is it that we're not able to convince, whether it's the architect or the owner early on, what are the things that we could change or improve to get our points across better? One of the key things that we talk about often is doing building simulation early on. Why is it that simulation is not being able to help designers when pen hits paper? Why is it that we're not looking at multiple options and simulating those options to help determine what's the right solution? And if we are doing it, is it working? Are we doing it well, or there is a missing piece here that we need to add to be able to communicate better? So here, what you're seeing is, I think a lot of you may have tried this. We're certainly trying to do building simulation early on, looking at the different options that are on the table as we work with our designers. To look at the pros and cons of option A versus B versus C. You can see some results directly from tools that show you the EUI and perhaps the impact of changes based on this form. But is this helping us get to the right answers? Is this actually providing direction that the designer needs? And then the next step is the owner, right? Because I think what we find is that we may have a certain direction we want to bring our designers to and the owners to, but we're perhaps not asking the right questions, and perhaps we're not sharing the right kind of solutions with the right kind of graphics. So here's another example of a very common, I'd like to say, design problem or solution that we as building simulation analysts are certainly looking at very often: glazing percentage. And how do we analyze that, and how do we convince some of the folks who are in love with all glass buildings to perhaps change that direction? What is the right way to essentially share the results for that? So here's an example which perhaps is not working as well. What is it that we need to change here? We're sharing cooling loads often to help show what the load impact is of the glazing percentage. We're certainly showing daylighting impact. And then we're showing, very often, a big part of what we're showing is the energy use intensity, which unfortunately cannot always be the answer or something that attracts someone to a solution or changing their mind. We're often using these numbers to change direction of design, change the mind of an owner, change the mind of a designer. So what is it that we need to do differently to help convince perhaps our designers or owners that all glass buildings are not the right solution, that they truly will not provide all that great view and daylighting that we talk about and think about just because it's all glass? And what truly happens is what you see is blinds. Those are the kind of things that we really want to be showing. And that's kind of what brought Project StaSIO to light, and so that we could create some graphics that we can then share amongst the group, so that we're not doing our technical day job and then spending an additional time creating graphics that can send the message that we want to send very simply and succinctly. Because there is a lot of data that we're dealing with. How can we share this data in a way that it actually communicates what we're trying to communicate? The second part of it is, what are we trying to communicate? Often what we're trying to communicate and the intention of sharing some of the results that we're sharing from our simulations, from the different options that we're studying, is the key, but is not often talked about. What is that question that you're trying to answer? Essentially, it is, can you do the energy model for this, and what's the result? Perhaps that question has not even been put on the table. What is it that this model is trying to answer? The second thing that I'd like to talk about is, sometimes we are certainly tied to a lot of standards. Perhaps it's LEED or WELL or some of the different standards that we're modeling for, and that's the one target. But perhaps we haven't asked the question of what is it that we need to change in the design to help get to that solution, and create a graphic that'll actually target that answer versus whether we met a certain credit or not. So here you can see another simulation that's perhaps looking at some of solar radiation in different times, but does it actually communicate the intent and what we're trying to convince the owner and the designer to do? This is a really great graphic, because you can again see there is a lot of data here, multiple simulations to show different shading devices and the impact of that shading device. And essentially the focus here is on load, right? So we're trying to reduce load, looking at different numbers and the impact. But as an owner, is this convincing enough? What is it that will actually help the designers and the owners spend that extra dollar amount that might be needed to move in this direction? What might be missing in this graphic to actually make the right selection? So the key is to find a way to communicate between the work that we do as building simulation experts with the designers who are actually taking that information and putting it on the building, and sometimes also supporting those designers to sell that same design feature to the owner. And that is what the intent of Project StaSIO is, to start to ask those questions and start to build some of those graphics. The third thing, certainly we're at fault, mostly because we're geeks and we love the data. There's a lot of fantastic information that we look at. I mean, I think the solar diagram is one of the best examples where we look at and we're thinking, wow, there's so much information here. Why is it that we are not using this? And we perhaps might share it in a presentation, or we might share it to convince an owner or a designer to put a shading device. Unfortunately, these can get too technical and really lead us to more of an education session and not really convincing or providing the information that's really required to answer the question and lead to a certain solution. So that communication gap perhaps lies in the right kind of imagery and the right kind of graphics that can actually answer a specific question leading to a certain direction that we're providing, which can then also be shared with the owner to help them understand why they might, in fact, need to spend a certain extra amount which pays back later on. One other key issue that we have is we're all working with multiple tools. There are multiple tools out there. There's multiple problems that we're trying to solve, and it's hard to use that and be able to communicate sometimes. So I think we're exposing our designers as well to just all sorts of data. What if there was, in addition to having guidelines for modeling, I think if you're not familiar with ASHRAE 209, I encourage you to look at that. That really breaks down all of the different modeling methodologies in a very clear manner on what needs to happen on what stage of design, and same with the architectural guide for energy modeling. A lot of these tools are out there and they have examples of graphics that we can reach out to, and there are books with graphics. But what if we actually had a resource that we could all use as a library and start to use similar graphics that are trying to convince someone to do a certain thing? I think we're all struggling with the same problems, but we're using different tools and different ways to communicate, and perhaps having to reinvent the wheel every time. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Supriya, so she can jump right into Project StaSIO, because I'm sure you're all eager to learn more about Project StaSIO and look at that.
Great. Thanks, Amarpreet. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And Amarpreet, could you confirm if you see my screen now?
Looks like.
The part of the solution is the slide which we are seeing right now. Is that the one, Supriya, you want to share?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, perfect. So Amarpreet did a really good job explaining the issues that we're trying to address. There is the big communication gap between designers, energy modelers, even software developers to an extent, where people are not clearly defining the problem statement or not able to visualize or communicate the solutions. We're doing detailed analysis, but we're not able to convey the kind of solution which a designer needs to incorporate to improve the building design. And in 2016 is when a group of us within IBPSA USA research subcommittee, we started talking about this issue, and we thought a possible solution could be a crowdsourced website where people who are doing these innovative graphics could share their ideas and maybe bring about greater discussion and education within this design engineering community on how simulation can actually inform design decisions. And Project StaSIO, where StaSIO stands for Standard Simulation Inputs and Outputs, is what we came up with. We are a really big group of people. We've been working on this for over 3 years now. We have energy modelers, consultants, software developers, engineers, mechanical engineers, all on our group, and architects. That's also brought about this unique perspective which StaSIO has, where we're looking at all aspects of graphic design and simulation, from the technical aspect of whether this is actually conveying the simulation results, and then the actual visual aspect, where as an architect, am I able to identify what change I need to make to my building design as a result of this simulation output. And this entire group has been working on this, trying to identify not just good solutions, but also bad solutions, so that people know what they can make that that decision on which graphic solution is a good representation of that particular question we're trying to answer. Project StaSIO has also undergone quite a bit of evolution. The website, which we developed in 2017, that at that point of time, we developed it as a proof of concept. We did it ourselves using Squarespace. It was not a very complex or not a very comprehensive solution. And over time, we held a competition in 2018, in conjunction with ASHRAE and IBPSA USA Building Performance Analysis Conference in Simbuild. We wanted to see if we could get enough traction in the simulation community to see whether this concept actually had value and people actually thought this was something that was required. And we invited people to submit graphics, submit case studies on certain projects they had worked on. And we were actually quite pleased with the results. We received over 70 submissions. And in 2019, we got some funding by the US Department of Energy to develop our website further. And what you see on the right-hand side is our new website, which has been developed by a professional software website developer. And we're using a more sophisticated platform. Our hope is to keep working on this, to make this a process where people are willing to submit projects they've developed. It's a way for consulting firms to show the innovative work they're doing, and it's a way for architects and engineers to learn from each other. So that's the way we want to evolve the communities, which can inform or improve the use of simulation in building design. Amarpreet spoke about ASHRAE 209 for a bit. And I would like to elaborate on how 209 has helped us, ASHRAE 209, the standard has helped us further refine the concept behind Project StaSIO. So for those of you who are not familiar with this ASHRAE standard, this standard is essentially energy simulation aided design for buildings, and specifically commercial buildings. It identifies 11 modeling cycles during the life cycle of a building, and identifies at each particular cycle how simulation can inform the building design. And Project StaSIO is focusing on the first 3 modeling cycles, where you're looking at simple box modeling, conceptual design, or load reduction. So this is early stage where simulation can have the most significant impact on a building's design and can contribute significantly to load reduction and a climate responsive structure. And that's what StaSIO wants to provide more guidance on. Oftentimes, architects work with energy modelers. Integrated design process is getting more and more widespread these days, but they receive a large number of simulation results, a very detailed report, which doesn't always translate to a comprehensive design strategy. And what we're trying to identify is how can you improve that communication where the energy modeler can give something valuable to inform the design decision during these particular modeling cycles. And another reference source for this kind of information is a recently published AIA document, AIA's Architect's Guide to Building Performance. This is available for free online. Again, it elaborates on the ASHRAE 209 modeling cycles and informs users on how simulation can be used at these particular stages of building design to inform the building design. So to elaborate on what we mean by the question approach to developing a graphic, we essentially identify particular categories in which the simulation questions can be grouped So a category could be load reduction, daylighting, or any kind of peak loads. So a category could fall within that, and then that is specified, and that is subdivided into further categories. And questions are then grouped within that subcategory. So if an energy modeler or an architect is looking for a particular solution within a particular subcategory, they could go within that particular questions menus section and see examples for how a graphic could answer the question they have for that particular section. And for that, we have a questions menu which follows this structure. And the categories we have relate to energy, HVAC, mechanical design, space loads, daylighting, etc. And our hope is that by the time we have a full, robust website, we would have a large number of questions and multiple graphics associated with each question. And then a consulting firm could actually look at some of these graphics, see and identify for themselves which graphic communicates the solution or an answer to that question more succinctly for them. The questions follow a particular format to make it clear on what the question is trying to answer. The format we have is, what is the impact of a particular input or strategy on a particular output or metric? So these aren't generic questions like, what is the EUI of my building? How do I reduce the EUI of my building? That is what is so open-ended and difficult to answer. And a designer could give you an energy modeler could give you 5 different options, but you don't know how to convert that into a design decision. Instead, if the question is more specific, what is the impact of different blind control strategies on illuminance on the course of an average day, then you know how to convert that into a design solution. And that's the idea behind having a questions menu and a question-based approach of simulation. So the Project StaSIO then has the graphic and case studies library. This is the part that has been crowdsourced through our competition in 2018. We have users who submitted graphics that were phrased around a particular question. For example, what is the impact of building massing on annual energy use? And we have, and then in addition to providing a graphic, users also have answered specific questions on what were the inputs that went into the simulation process, what are the outputs, and Aman will get into more details about those questions and what the thought was behind defining those questions. So we still continue to grow based on crowdsourced submissions. So we rely on the simulation community to provide us some examples which we can then showcase on our website, provide more information for people who are looking for such examples. And users can contribute in 2 manners. They can either provide a graphic or a case study. A graphic, the distinction between these two, a graphic is answering a specific question through a single image, and it has just that one particular thing it's been developed for. A case study is more like a story. So there's a whole solution that the energy modeler is trying to provide, and the process that they have gone through to come up with that solution, the various different iterations they developed, the different design solutions they looked at, and the final solution they came up with. That's what the case study is trying to highlight. So in order to contribute, there are several steps someone would have to go through. Now with the new website, all of this is available online. Previously, this was like till 2018, this was an extremely manual process. We had a form which a user would fill out, and that form would get translated into an Excel file, and then the StaSIO team would manually copy paste that information to the website template. We did not have a way to populate the website template automatically. It was extremely painful, and we realized that we could not grow fast using that process. So we were glad when we got funding this year to redo our website and have this process become more automated. So the new StaSIO website, you would need to create an account to contribute. You can view all the submissions, the existing submissions on the website without registering. But in order to post a comment or in order to submit, you would need to create an account. Once you've created an account, you can contribute through a single graphic or a case study, whatever you prefer. And you also have a dashboard where you can see all the submissions that you've made. Once you submit something, it doesn't get published on the website. We have a review process that we go through. So, and also in order to submit, you need to give us permission to publish this the particular graphic or case study you're submitting. This permission is essentially just asking you if there is any project identifying information and if you need to get permission from the client or the building owner in order to publish this. And if that's the case, then we wait till you have that permission before we publish anything. Once you submit something, it goes through 2 rounds of reviews. One is just an admin review, which the StaSIO team does to make sure the image is good resolution, it's clear, and it can be visually communicated. And then we have a set of reviewers who come from different fields of expertise, architecture, simulation, even software development. And we ask them to review it for a more thorough analysis. And if they approve of those submissions, there might be comments, which then a submitter is required to make revisions for. And after that, it gets published to the website by a StaSIO admin. I will now hand it over to Aman. He will walk us through the different questions we have that a user is required to answer for a graphic submission, and also give us some examples of some good submissions that we have on the StaSIO website.
Yep, Supriya, could you please continue? I can just prompt you to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I changed you as presenter.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Supriya and Amarpreet. And thank you everyone for joining today. I'm Aman Singhvi. I work out of AECOM New York office, and I am a high performance design specialist in New York. And what that means is I have to deal with at the intersection of all the disciplines, engineering, architecture, and I deal with this question of effective communication every day. And that's what makes all of us come together for Project StaSIO about this question. It's not only a question of graphic, it's about effective communication. We are doing all this work, we're doing all the simulations, technical data. We find comfort in all the technical analysis, but what's the point if we're not able to get the point across to actually have an impact? So what I'm going to take you through today is the graphic itself, and it's about graphic as visual communication tool and what we're actually looking for in this and Project StaSIO. So what you're seeing right now is it's a lot of work. It's a lot of analysis of blinds versus shades in different times of the year, different times of days. And it's an analysis that is probably taken a long time to run. And all that, using just a simple layout, like a grid layout, brings all of the options in front of you. And then you can kind of begin to have a charrette or have a discussion around it, saying, oh, this one, maybe this one is performing better, but we might want to optimize this a little bit more, or we might have a combination of shades and blinds. But if there's no way to present all the work that you're doing, it kind of defeats the purpose of all the simulations and all the analysis that goes on behind optimizing a building, building orientation, building design, basically. If you can go to the next slide. So what are we looking at? So every time you're making a graphic, you're intrinsically thinking about all these things that we are actually prompting you to bring out. We are giving you a structure, a framework to think deep about your graphic, and then uncover all the intent and all the thinking behind the graphic that you're already doing intrinsically. But we want that to be visible for everybody to see. So this is our main framework where we ask you to kind of title your graphic as what is the impact of dash on dash, which is what is the impact of your input, of your strategy, of your work on the output or metrics. So that's kind of like a framework where you're already thinking about it, but we want you to verbalize it, we want you to word it, and so that everybody can kind of give a context to your graphic and start to look at, oh, okay, this is the driving question, this is the underlying intent. So that'll be the first thing you would need to fill out when you're submitting a graphic. Can you go on to the next, please? So, Supriya, can you go on to the next slide, please?
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you see that?
Thank you. Yeah. So what are we looking at? This is another thing that we're talking about. It's very important for people to see what are they looking at in general. And in general, we're looking for you to tell us an effective way of visual communication. So in general, it should be clear in the beginning that, okay, we're looking at maybe a daylight study or something. So like how to title that, how to make your point across. And then what's your process? How did you make the graphic? We included this because many times people want to know how you reach to that point, and they want to kind of follow in the footsteps to have their own workflow, their own point across. So what was your process? What was your tools? Have you used multiple softwares? How did you sequence them? How did you layer your graphics? So all these questions are important for everybody to understand. Okay, this is using 2 different softwares, or this is just an Excel graphic, and this is possible in Excel. So this kind of empowers our entire community to implement your strategies or effective tools in their own graphic. Next slide, please. So this is what I feel is the question that is the underlying thread of your graphic. What was your intent? What specific questions did you want to answer with that one image that you're producing? If most of the time when you're making a graphic or when you're trying to get your point across, you notice that clarifying the intent leads you towards a more clear and clarified graphic, which is they're very intrinsically related to each other. The more clear your intent or your investigation question to you, the more clear your graphic would come across to everybody else. And that's why we asked this question. And so as you can see, so far into the submission process, we're asking you to think about all these things that you're probably thinking about, and have it be present to everybody else as well, and for you as well to notice, oh yeah, this was my main intent, and maybe what's the UI number, what's the best orientation. These are just examples. Next slide, please. So the next question is, how did this graphic fit into the larger design investigation? What did you learn from producing this graphic? This is more of a question of the impact. What was the impact of your graphic on the larger investigation? Obviously, you're part of a team, and you have architects, engineers, everybody, and you have very non-technical stakeholders, and you have very technical stakeholders, and you have to interface between all of them through your graphic or through your presentation. So how did your work impact the larger investigation? Did it uncover new insights? Did it come? Was it very timely? It came at a critical time where there are major design changes, and that only made possible because your graphic uncovered something. So we're very excited to hear how all these things. How did you make this graphic? What was the impact of a graphic? What were you thinking behind it? Because we want to also showcase what an impactful thing visual communication tools can be. So this is, I think, a very important question that we kind of have purposefully there to make you think broadly about your graphic. Next slide, please. Another trail through question, and this is actually a good way of thinking about the pros and cons. So after having been through the entire process of question formulation, intent clarification, graphic creation, design discussion, what did you actually realize was successful about your graphic, and what was not successful in communicating your intended message? Were you able to successfully deliver your message? Were you able to have an impact? Because behind the scenes, we have so much technical analysis going on. We have, what's the, did we get that across to a meaningful outcome? So this was a question where you kind of reflect on yourself. Okay, this is thinking about what can you also do the next time, and that will be the next question. Can you go to the next slide, please? That'll be our last question, where after you have gone through the whole process and reflected on the success and non-success, let's not call it failure, success and non-success of your graphic, to visually communicate your own intent, what would you have done differently? And it's about having, in professional practice, we understand it's about having more time, more fee. And this is a point of reflection where in our world, in our simulation world and building science world, we call optimization. So this question is more of you to optimize your own graphic, optimize your own style. And how do you refine your process of visual communication? Oh, maybe you should have used the software differently. Oh, maybe you can do this better in a layout like that. Oh, maybe grid layout is better. Circular layout is better. Or maybe the EUI numbers need to be big and bold, and the title needs to be big and bold so that everybody understands in the first 5-10 seconds. So these are points of reflection where we ask this question specifically because you need to also have a balancing act of time, workflow, content, and everything. But the main idea is to get your intent across. And through these questions, we are actually gathering all of these questions from you for the world to see that this is the whole process that goes on in the minds of everybody, all the technical folks out here, to actually present something. And it's not easy. It's all these questions where you have to think about it. You have to effectively lay it out. You have to think about colors, legends, visibility. So eventually, our aim with Project StaSIO is to have a crowdsourced database of all these different ways we can use, and we can learn from each other. We also have a discussions page. We'll have a forum where you can ask questions. Oh, how do I present thermal comfort data in correlation to sun path? Any question that you have in mind, you can ask the community. Members can actually tell you, they can actually tag you in a post or refer you to some graphic that already kind of faced that challenge and effectively communicated that. So when you submit your graphic, you would need to go through all these questions, and this is for you to uncover all the steps you already take to go through the graphic. And if you go to the next slide, please. In 2018, we had our competition, Project StaSIO, and it was super successful. We got a lot of entries, and we kind of selected 40 for consideration for the entire competition. 12 case studies were different, and case studies are actually a sequence of your graphic telling a narrative or a story. So the questions are a little bit different about how you sequence your graphic. What is the overall story that you're trying to say through a multiple graphic, but in the graphics category is just one single powerful image where we kind of want you to explain the whole process. And as you can see, we got some really amazing graphics, and we got a lot of learning points from 2008 from this competition, basically. So next slide is showing you just a simple shadow analysis. Sorry, there's a little bit of lag. Supriya, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, thanks. So everybody has seen this simple shadow analysis. You know, you can do this in many software. You have to do this if you're designing maybe landscape study or maybe placing parking lots, building study, something like that. An example of just making this visually stunning and also having more information using just one design element, which is color, can have a large impact. So the next slide will show you that it just comes to life. What's happening here is the bifurcation of shadows into red and blue, which is the morning and evening, and it actually matched with the design intent. They wanted to use a park in the center for morning and evening crowds, and they wanted to segregate. And this kind of layering of different shadows, you can see where the blue becomes darker and the red becomes darker, where you can say, okay, that's actually the morning layering of shadows. That's actually the evening layering of shadows. So just by a simple tool as color, you can get into a lot of detail in presentation and design discussion around your graphic. So there are many design elements like layout, color, titles, text size. These are important considerations, and it takes a lot of time to kind of refine this whole process. If we go to the next slide, please. So another example is this what we call a climate clock. And what effectively this is all the annual climate data visualized in one single graphic, and the axis is wrapped around in a circle. And it's just a simple idea, like you want to see all the data at once. You don't want to have like a separate temperature graph, wind rows, or maybe thermal comfort or something all separately and trying to see where they all correlate or where they all overlap. But a simple tool as a climate clock or just wrapping around the axis can give you vertical, what we call a vertical series of discovery, where you're looking outwards in the radius of this climate clock, and you're finding new things. You're saying, oh, okay, on the winter time, thermal comfort is this, and outdoor wind is actually here, so we can kind of orient the building this way. And this is more like graphic as a tool. And this is the next step of your graphic, where you make tools with your graphic for your team to kind of print out and paste it in your meeting rooms, and just like use that as a tool whenever they want to visualize something. So we're also looking for graphics like these, and this was one of the entries from 2018 competition, and just wanted to present it here as an example. And it doesn't, the next slide will show you that it doesn't have to be complicated softwares and complicated mechanisms. Excel is okay. Any tool is okay. We just need an intent of the whole process clarified, and you can kind of use any tools. And if you want to have any questions around tools and everything, that's what our platform is for. Just to ask questions, get ideas, and get all the information. Like I know some people might be super well versed in Excel numbers, but have you ever tried making a graphic in Excel? It's not that bad, and it's kind of like it acts like a dashboard, and that's amazing as well, because you've successfully communicated your point across using any tool possible. So that's what these kind of stories we kind of encourage in our whole process. Next slide, please. some of the takeaways. So do more, earlier, faster. The earlier you get involved in having effective communication, the more impactful your design can be. The more impact you'll have with your analysis data. Complexity is key, but presenting it simply is more priority. We are all dealing with complex issues, like complex simulations, and we want to present it in a way that it makes the points come across. Range of possibilities. As we saw with the grid layout, we always test different options. Our field in simulation world is about testing different options, and how to present that clearly is a challenge in itself. So simulate a range of possibilities and how to integrate that with design intent to kind of present effectively. Design parameters. It's important for people to see in the first 5 seconds what they're looking at. What are your design parameters? What is the graphic really about? So that's one of the big takeaways from the graphics that we got in 2018, in last year. And navigate large data sets of performance data. We all deal with large data sets. How to effectively navigate and concise the whole information into one single graphic or a case study. It's easier if you can navigate your data and then kind of tailor that to present. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, this year, this webinar is actually happening late, and maybe you guys haven't heard of Project StaSIO before. We just had our competition deadline close just maybe a week ago, and we got amazing submissions this year as well. They are in review process, and we have an amazing panel of judges this year from different fields, from their software developers, from their architects, professors in very esteemed universities, and they're judging all the graphics based on the points we talked about. And we want you to be on the lookout for the results of this year graphic. We'll be posting them everywhere. We'll be uncovering the winner in the ASHRAE Building Performance Conference happening in Denver. And we're going to be posting all the graphics up after the winners announced on the graphic on the website. And we have more exciting news for the next year onwards. We will be selecting some of the graphics, and we might be presenting them in different webinars like AIA, American Institute of Association. We have Greenbuilt, we have USGBC. We'll have opportunities to showcase your work in different platforms. So that's something in the works for next year, and we're super excited for that and this year's competition. And with that, this was the end. We are Project StaSIO. Please visit projectstasio.com. The website is still in development, but we're excited to just have you all on board with the thing. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Amarpreet, Supriya, and Aman. We invite questions, and to post questions, you can use question pane, which would be on your screen. And either Supriya, Amarpreet, or Aman would be happy to respond to your comments or queries or questions. Do you have any questions, audience?
I don't see any right now. And just to add, while we're waiting for people to type in their question, if they have any, the idea behind the competition is to, of course, stimulate discussion around the project, and also to get some interest on the idea. But we still do take submissions even after the competition deadline has passed. So you can still go ahead and submit, and you can just answer a question which says, is this for the Project StaSIO competition? You can set that to no. So essentially what Aman was talking about, we hope to have a different format after this competition where we can work with different organizations like AIA, USGBC, and showcase submissions not as a part of a competition, but as regular webinars, to make this an educational series. It's a way for people to learn from each other. So that's what we're hoping to do. And we would still have a review process. It would kind of be like a journal where you submit a paper, there's a review process, and then it's published in a particular version of the journal. That's what we hope to do, where we have a continuous submission and review process, and then we can publish it through webinars and allow the actual developer of that graphic to talk about that thought process and why they feel that graphic communicates or answers the design question they were trying to answer. So that's the hope, and please do visit our website, have a look at all volunteer work. So we kind of hope to grow based on the support of the simulation community and the architectural community.
Thanks.
I'd like to add,
Supriya, yeah, go ahead, Amarpreet.
I think I encourage folks to, even if you feel at this moment you don't necessarily have a graphic to share, I encourage you to go to the website to just look at the questions, because I think that's a really good resource for the questions as you're starting to work on a project and you're doing that early stage modeling. It can help trigger and lead to additional questions from your end as well to figure out what it is that you can actually do from an impact standpoint and go beyond the EUI results and that discussion with the designers and the owners.
Okay, thanks, Amarpreet. In fact, I have a question and I was about to ask, but you actually helped me to articulate it better. The question is to all three of you, and not particular about how do you really deal with, but what kind of trend have you seen in last entries and kind of things people do? So basically, there are two questions when I am asking about trend. One is that do people raise a question and try to answer the question more for the early design stage or design development or final design communication kind of stage where people are really trying to improvise their visualization skill or communication skill? At what stage? That's first question. And second question is that do you see any trend or rather importance or entries more for thermal side of analysis or daylighting side of analysis, including shadows and so on and so forth? And is this limited to only architectural spatial analysis or also HVAC system level analysis? So there are three questions in a manner.
Right. I can try and answer, and I'm sure Amarpreet and Aman would have some thoughts as well. And those are some great questions, Rajan. The first one, the kind of question, is it mostly at early design stage? I would feel like even though the website is focused on the first three modeling cycles of Standard 209, which is pertinent to the early design stage, we have received some submissions which have to do with HVAC system selection. There's a very excellent graphic on analysis of ground source heat pumps on the website, which was one of the winning entries in 2018. Yes, though we have seen more submissions of the early design stage, the kind of questions asked for modeling cycle 4 and beyond are very different. They're less open-ended, I feel. They're more specific because by that time, in a way, you have the internal loads defined and you're trying to optimize the energy part of the building design, which is more related to HVAC systems and controls and operations. So I feel like the early stage is more exploratory, whereas the later stages are more specific. And defining the question in a clear manner at the early stage can be more critical because that's when you can really inform the building design. Whereas in the later stages, you have a building design that you're working with and trying to optimize the mechanical systems or the lighting systems or the actual operation of the building. In terms of the trend, I am honestly not sure. We have seen several daylighting, spatial analysis, graphics, but in terms of trends, I wouldn't be able to answer that. Maybe a quick look through the website would be able to tell you. This year, we're still reviewing the graphics and case studies. I'm not sure if we've received more daylighting or spatial analysis, graphics, so that has been a key area of interest for StaSIO for sure. And I forget your third question, or maybe I've already answered that.
No, thanks. I think you have touched upon all three together.
Yeah, and I would just like to add to Supriya's response, which is exactly what is happening. What we're seeing in the design world, in professional practice, basically, is there is a trend of having larger impact in the beginning of a project. So that calls for a lot of effective communication in early stage of design. And it's not only about one metric or the other. The trend, what I'm seeing, is to layer different data to present your story with different stakeholders. So your daylight analysis may be maybe initially intended for just architects to kind of visualize how their design is doing. But when you bring the mechanical engineers in the same room and you layer the impact of heat gain and connect that to the HVAC system in the same storyboard, it starts to have more impact. And that is definitely what is happening. As a trend, to your first question, I'm seeing a trend for early stage more than later stage. And the trend is more for layering different data to communicate your intent. And in general, specifically on HVAC, these days, different software have all kinds of metrics inbuilt within the same software. So the graphic style can be a uniform graphic. The same software can give you HVAC option graphic, maybe graphic or different numbers, where as well as the daylight numbers, as well as EUAC. So it's also effective if you're combining active systems, passive systems, architecture, everything into like a storyboard. And I think that would be great. And in general, we welcome this kind of change, and everybody will learn more from the layering part. Thanks.
Hey, so I
Thanks.
just want to add.
We have yeah, okay.
To that, I think the number one question, certainly early design modeling, is what's impacting the projects and is important. But what's really neat is, just given what we do, even if that project was not impacted with that one graphic or with that one solution, building simulation invariably is, to some extent, sort of a research-based thing. So what you do in one project invariably helps your next project and the next project. So I think that's sort of the key thing. It's not a dead end if you really developed it during DD and it didn't impact that one project. It's going to help you in the next project as well. So in the second, in terms of trend, I think there's a lot of discussion with regards to glazing percentage, with the codes helping us sort of have that discussion. So I think I'm really grateful for the codes that are requiring are limiting the max glazing percentage, because that allows for some of the HVAC simulations to happen earlier on, which to some extent is negative because you're kind of using your mechanical systems as a crutch to get the efficiency and still perhaps create envelopes that are not the most efficient solutions. But at least it's allowing for that discussion to happen, which is also linking it to the research that has come out with the health and productivity and things like that are showing the impact it has on people, which has really helped us be able to show the impact of daylighting and thermal comfort and whatnot to the end goal, and the productivity, and that conversation with the owner is getting a lot more attention than it did prior, when we didn't necessarily have that research that we could point to from like the Harvard indoor air quality research and some of the other research that we've been seeing from various institutes.
Thanks. Supriya, would you like to address those two questions which was posted very quickly? We are almost an hour, but it would be nice if you can address them in a couple of minutes.
Okay. So the one question we have is, does the website have a search function so that specific questions can be looked up? And yes, the website does have a search function. When you go on the website, you'll see this small magnifying glass, and you can just search for some keywords. We still are building our repository, so it's not necessary that the thing that you search for would have a graphic associated with it, but at least you'll see related posts that might give you some idea. The second question, it may be good if Project StaSIO is also open for energy retrofit of existing buildings. There is a big number of young professionals working on it. Optimization of choices is very vital here too. I think that's a very good comment. Having some way of visualizing results for analysis done for optimization might be good. I think that could be something we look into in the future. That definitely is a category, a particular modeling cycle that we could start focusing on as well. So that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Great. So with this, we are ending the webinar. I again thank Supriya, Amarpreet, and Aman for offering this insight to the larger audience of IBPSA. And I congratulate IBPSA USA for this very important activity. And I also thankful to US DOE who is supporting your activities. Definitely adds a lot of value to what you're doing. Thank you again. And in the end, I also wish to encourage our IBPSA members or those who are not member to become a IBPSA supporting member. That means you need to subscribe to IBPSA and you will get some privileges of that. Although IBPSA chapters, most of them have a free membership, but I encourage people to become a supporting member of IBPSA World. So with that note, I would like to conclude, and I wish you a very happy day forward, and those who are in the eastern side of the world, very good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajan.
Yeah, thank you, Rajan.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.